And welcome. It's Friday. We are live and it's good to see you all. Today, we're going to discuss 6 challenges tennis coaches face. So a big part of my job as a coach educator is I travel around the, east of England to various venues. And I get to meet lots and lots of tennis coaches. I'm currently in the middle of a LTA coach forum roadshow where we're going to travel around different venues and different counties. I get to meet lots of different tennis coaches and discuss some on-court stuff about how to sort of maybe look at tactical and technical developments at Red, but some off-court stuff as well. And a lot of sort of topics came out in a recent discussion about sort of mental health and pressures tennis coaches face. And there was a really interesting conversation and sort of pulled together sort of 6 challenges, 6 common challenges that tennis coaches face, which I put out on my Instagram yesterday at my tennis coaching. And these are quite common themes through coach ed that coaches sort of feed back to me. So I thought it'd be good today just to sort of talk through all 6. If you have any other challenges that you face, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and I'm happy to do sort of future videos on this. I'm a little bit short on time today, so I won't be able to answer questions live. But please feel free to comment, and I'm trying to make sure I reply to every single one of you. So number 1, it's an outcome pressure job, and tennis coaching, no matter what level you work at, whether it be performance with competitive players or what I call hit and giggle recreational players, those players who maybe turn up once a week, there's always an outcome pressure because your job is to make the player better, no matter what sort of level you're working with. If you're working with hit and giggle, you've got to make sure that they can play the game after a certain number of sessions. If they've been coming to your lessons for, I don't know, a year and they can't serve and they can't rally, then the parents aren't going to keep them in your program. The kid's going to get bored and they're going to want to leave. So that's a massive outcome pressure. Your job is to improve performance, and the word performance gets thrown around a lot, but performance is being able to play the game and sort of play tennis. And if you can't get your players to be able to play tennis after a certain number of lessons, then 1, the player will get bored and they will leave. Or 2, the parents will get really unhappy because they're investing money. And no matter what parents say, oh, I just want them to come and have a good time and stuff, they still want value for money. They still want tennis lessons. And if they don't improve, then they leave. And that's going to have a massive effect on your business and your income and your ability to feed your family. And that's a lot of pressure. I think sometimes coaches go down the route of, well, if I can't improve the player, I'll just make it really fun and really silly. And then I'll sort of hide the fact that the kids can't play the game, which I get. And I see it a lot in different venues when I go around traveling and I watch coaches during my lunch breaks and stuff. And I agree, tennis should be fun. And I had a recent conversation with a coach about player development. And he said, well, in my social sessions or my recreational sessions, I just want to make them fun. And I'm like, well, you're kind of selling tennis short a little bit, because guess what? Tennis is actually really fun. Playing a tennis match is really fun. It's competition, it's problem solving, it's winning, it's losing, it's a one-on-one sort of combat, if you want to use the word combat. That's really fun, especially for young kids. Because kids are very competitive. You only have to go into a day nursery or a preschool to see how competitive kids are over toys and stuff. Tennis can be fun, and tennis coaching can be fun. And we'll look at a few reasons today why maybe coaching doesn't become fun. But I do think there's outcome pressure there. And then at the other end of the spectrum, when you're working with competitive players, that's really tough because you've got to hit certain ratings and rankings to get regional invites or invites to sort of camps or get into certain grade tournaments. And even though the LTA, and I was at a workshop recently, and the LTA said, well, it doesn't really matter about ratings or rankings. Like, they're not that interested. They're not interested in if you're top 10 under 9. They're really not. It's just something that they can use as a gauge to see where players are at that sort of current time. But parents don't see that. Players don't see that. And I do think we do need some type of system, but I'm not too sure ratings and rankings is the right way. Because I think that creates a lot of outcome pressure, not only on the player, because players are going into these tournaments, and I've had it in the past where players have seized up because dad or mum have really hyped up the grade two aspect. Oh, it's grade two, it's a grade two, it's a really high level. And the kid's lost the match before she can go onto the court because she's so stressed because just all this external pressure. At the end of the day, it's just practice tennis matches because it's only at the end of the sort of development at the Grand Slam challenger level does it really matter when you're trying to make a living from the game. If you're playing under 9 grade 2, does it really matter? Is it really going to make a big difference in your life long term? Probably not. Is it possibly going to help on your journey to maybe being a professional player? Yeah, possibly. It's going to give you sort of exposure to better players, I guess, and exposure to that little more of a high pressure tournaments. But in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Is it more important to win a grade 2, or is it more important to win an ATP point or WTA point? I think winning a point is probably is more sort of beneficial to a player. But that creates a lot of pressure as well, because then coaches lose players quite a lot because parents are trying to chase that next level. I've got to get to grade 2. I've got to get to grade 1. I've got to get into the regional squad. I've got to get the invitation to the national squad. And what happens then is parents sort of leave very good coaches and they go off to other coaches who maybe have worked with some top players. But I'm a big believer that players develop players. They don't develop coaches don't develop players. Top players become top players because they've got the talent, they've got the athletic skill, and a coach will help them on their journey. But lots of coaches will help them on their journey. And said that they're from the very first, maybe tots coach right through to sort of county coaches. Every coach will play a part, and I really don't like talking about the players that I've worked with, and I've worked with good players over the years. But did I make them play at Wimbledon? No, because maybe 10, 20 other coaches played their part, and the player plays a huge part. Did I help players get to top national rankings? A little bit, but only a little bit. Again, the player played a big part. And I think sometimes there's a lot of outcome pressure. And again, we'll sort of get down to peer pressure in a few moments, but it is an outcome focused sport, no matter what we say, whether it be participation, hit and giggle, or performance. And that puts a lot of challenges on coaches because we are self-employed and we have to look after our own business, and it's tough. It's really, really tough because if we lose players, whether or not they get bored and leave our program, or we lose players to local player development centres or regional centres, that hits us income wise. And if our income drops, then it affects everything, our family and our sort of day-to-day life, especially at the moment with the cost of living crisis and stuff like that. So yeah, outcome pressure. It's a very outcome pressure job. No matter what anyone tells you, there's a lot of pressure on ratings and rankings, and to actually develop players, which really should be the core part of our job. Tradition. It worked in the past. God, if I had a pound for every time I heard this, coach, I've worked in this industry for 30 years and I've never had a problem, and I've been doing this a long, long time. And then you sort of watch their coaching style and it's like, yeah, it's 30 years old, mate. And I always compare it to like a 20-year-old TV. Does it work? Yes. Can you still watch TV in it? Yes. Is the quality any good? No. Is it HDMI? No. Is it 4K? No. So that TV has stuck in a period of time, and the world's moved on. Tennis has moved on. Tennis has moved on dramatically in the 20 years I've been coaching. 20 years ago, it was all basket feeding. It was all very technical, making players look good, shaping players up, repetition. I was really told that tennis is this very repetitive game and consistency is key. The game today, first strike tennis, short points, getting in big serve, ball free, very, very low rally thresholds. Players have got big weapons. The game is more physical than ever before. Yeah, S&C didn't exist 20 years ago. Players didn't do any type of sort of fitness. It was very much all tennis. And again, that's maybe from a performance side, but even at a recreational side, you have to understand 20 years ago, players or kids even were doing multi sports. They were playing football, basketball, athletics, netball, gymnastics, They were playing 5 or 6 different sports. They were also playing out, as we call it here in the UK. Back in the day, we played out. We played out with friends. We went to the park. We threw stones. We climbed trees. We played what we call knick knock, where you knock on someone's door and run away. Good for speed when you got some big angry man chasing after you for knocking on his door. And we did all those things. And we didn't have any coaching really. We just played. And by playing, we learned so many skills. Like you need to learn how to balance if you're up a tree. You have to learn how to shift your weight and your problem solving, because if you step on the wrong branch and you're gonna fall and it's gonna hurt. Kids aren't doing that today. Kids are on their iPads and they're problem solving, but they're problem solving with their fingers and their mind, and but not their body. And we have to understand that now. It's a different world, and we have to really embrace our role now of developing skill. And I put a post out this week which got a lot of traction, some heat, which I knew it would. Do you coach skill or technique? And people, oh, it's technique. But you can't teach really advanced technique with an underlying level of skill. And these kids haven't got skills no more. I'm finding my time teaching kids how to throw, teaching kids how to run, stuff that I took for granted 20 years ago, because the kids either did it themselves, they learned by playing, or they learned by other sports. And now we're getting these kids coming in and they're training tennis 6-8 hours a week at the age of 8, and they're doing no other multi-sport, sort of no other sports. And it's just nuts. That's so traditional way of thinking of tennis. And what's happening is we're getting these kids now which they're not skilled. They haven't got any skill. They haven't got any problem solving. And there's a kid I work with at the moment, and you ask them questions and they have no idea. Like they have no idea how to play the game. And the reason for it is the coach they're previously working with was very sort of just, I'll tell you what to do, I'll tell you how to play, I'll tell you how to hit the ball, I'll tell you where to hit the ball. So when they get into an open situation, they just don't know how to make decisions. They just don't know how to make decisions, and they're just hitting shots for hitting shots' sake. There's no purpose to it. And sort of my style's a little bit different. My style's much more player-led and player-focused. Like they make the decisions. They decide the scoring format. They will decide what to work on. And obviously I lead them as well. And it's a lot of skill development in sort of my work. And if you're really clever and if you're a tennis coach watching this, you should be looking at the latest trends. The latest trends are constraint-based coaching. You look at football or soccer, you look at rugby, you look at cricket, all those sports. I know that's team sports, maybe a little bit different, but even like archery, I was watching a presentation this week on archery and sort of constraint-based led coaching. Archery is the most solo thing in the world. You're just on your own. But the way these top athletes are now training, it's not about how to do it, how to pull the bow back or whatever you call it. I did a bit of archery in Turkey, but I can't remember what it was called. But like, it's not about how to bowl. It's not about how to kick a football. It's about, okay, how can you perform this under pressure with millions or billions of people watching you at the Olympics? Or how can you perform this in a game? And all other sports are doing it. And tennis, we've been flirting with it for years with game-based coaching and stuff like that, but we still haven't embraced it. And there's a huge change coming within tennis. You only have to look around at some of the top coaches in the world, and I mean like the top, like the cream coaches. They're all constraint-based led. They're all talking about playing the game and putting constraints in to improve technique. And I think the choice you have to make as a coach is, do you want to be a part of this new tradition, this new way of coaching, or do you want to stick to your guns? And it worked for me in the past, and sort of go like that. And I think it's a tough one because things have worked in the past for me and I've been successful. Could I coach that way today? No, the world's changed. I definitely, because I think years ago I'd be much more like a sergeant major. I had a reputation of being that shouty, intense, all in coach, and really sort of drill the players hard and really get that work ethic up. And that was my reputation, and people came to me for that. But looking back, I'm actually embarrassed because I wasn't doing anything. Yes, the kids were working hard, they were getting a sweat on, and they could perform really intense, but I wasn't really teaching them anything. I was just teaching them how to work hard. And yeah, they sort of went into matches with this great attitude of working hard, and they knew they could outperform players to a certain level, but they never got to a high level. And I think part of that's down to me, because I didn't teach them how to play. I didn't teach them how to play the game. So even my coaching's evolving, and I did a course last week, and I was saying to the coaches about reflection, and reflection is really important as a coach. Like, I'm a much better coach today than I was yesterday based on my lessons that I did last night. And I'm a much better coach than I was 12 months ago. And I'm much better coach than I am 12 years ago. And part of that is I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly listening to podcasts. Big up to sort of the big up, big shout out to like the High Performance podcast, Control the Controllables podcast, Chris Suter's podcast, really good. But I've been looking at other sports podcasts quite a lot recently as well. I've just downloaded the Eddie Jones, the England rugby coach's book as well, because I think there's so much to learn. I think sometimes we get too bogged down in our tradition as tennis coaches. And there's a great clip which I'll put onto social media this week about tennis coaching in the 30s, and tennis coaching hasn't changed a lot in that sort of 90 years or so. But yeah, tradition. It worked in the past, great, but so did your 12-inch flat TV. Just because it works doesn't mean that it's actually up to date with the latest technology or trends. Okay, so challenge number 3, top down. Mimic the pros. This really annoys me, and it's annoyed me forever. And again, hand up, I've been guilty. I've looked at this sort of pro clips and how the top players play, and I've then gone to court and I've tried to get my little 8, 9, 10-year-old to sort of copy it. It's such a bad way of coaching, because you have to understand, and again, with experience now, I understand that an 8-year-old physically and mentally can't do what a 20-year-old professional player can do. They really can't. So we're trying to get them to perform these advanced techniques, and for example, like forehand, like open stance, hips and shoulder rotation, box turn, elbow, follow through, up over here, close the racket face and come across. Great. They're 7. They can barely get their racket behind the ball. They've got no sense of rhythm, so they can't control the speed of the racket head. Let's just teach them like they're 7. Really basic, racket behind the ball, push, tap, little follow through, little tip stance, just little body parts, just start to work together. And as they get older, we can add more segments to it. And we're just slowly building the player up over time. And I was at a club a few weeks back and I was watching a lesson. Again, I'm not having a go at coaches here, because I think all coaches go into it with the best intention, but it's either a lack of education or a lack of awareness. But the coach was trying to teach this very advanced technique to a 7-year-old, and like the 7-year-old, one's not listening because they're 7 and they just want to have fun. 2, they haven't physically got the skill to perform this multi-body segment move. And 3, physically, the ball was the wrong ball color, as bouncing over their head. So the coach is just setting the player up to fail, and you can see the player getting frustrated because they couldn't achieve it, and the coach was getting frustrated, and and I'm sure you've seen this before. They run round the net and they grab hold of the racket and they start showing the player, do this, do this, do this, and 1, players are kinesthetic, so they're not feeling anything there, and 2, the coach is just trying to control it. And it's such a false way of coaching. And again, I've been there, and I do a lot of stuff now with sort of analytics and stuff, and I'm quite conscious of stats, because there's a lot of stats out there, and I think that my mindset when I'm coaching is, okay, I've got to get the players ready, so when they play at a certain level, they are using their serve, they're using ball free. Don't need to do it at red, because 1, you can't put the ball away because it's so soft. But I'm starting to put in those little seeds, those seeds of what I want them to look at in 20 years. And what I've done a lot over the last maybe 2-3 years, especially with lockdown, is I've watched a lot of tennis at different age groups. So I think I've got a good awareness of standards of what the players need to be at each stage. So when I've got them at 8, I know roughly what I need to look. What they need to look like at 9. I know what they need to look like at 10. Under 12s, under 14s, under 18s, and hopefully sort of ITF sort of challenger level. So I know the pathway, and what I've been doing over the last couple of sort of years is building up my knowledge. Okay, this is what they need to be able to do tactically, and okay, this is what the top players are sort of doing. And yeah, I'm not looking so much technically. Like if you look at Medvedev, we'll get into technique a little bit later on. Like I'm not going to teach him to play like Medvedev. But mainly the stuff I look at the pros is sort of tactically, okay, how's the game going? But how's the game going to change in 20 years? And that's the big question I always throw out to coaches is, great, you're teaching little 7-year-old Steve how to play like Djokovic, but Djokovic is not going to be here in 20 years. Someone else is going to be here, and the game's going to be different again, probably. Maybe it'd be slower. I don't think it can get much faster, but maybe it might be faster. Maybe it might go back to serve volley. Like, are we looking into the future here? Like, why are we looking at 2022 when our players won't be playing to maybe 2030, 2035? Like, we should be looking ahead, not sort of at the sort of what at the now. The one thing that I would do with the mimic the pros is use them as role models. Again, most of the players I work with have no idea of professional tennis because they don't come from tennis backgrounds. There's not a lot of love for the game, and I think that's part of our job. As with Justin Sherrin last week for an under 10 performance workshop, and he talked about making the players fall in love with the games. Like, you know what, that's so right. Like, we should be encouraging them to watch matches. We should be bringing clips of matches on court with us and showing them the iPad and showing them epic points and showing them how players win and using them as role models and getting the players to fall in love with the game, because that's how we all started playing tennis. I said, here in the UK, you watch Wimbledon, you fall in love with it. You don't fall in love with coaching. You really don't fall in love with coaching. You fall in love with the game. And I think that's how we should be using the pros as role models and showing them clips and getting them to do little homework assignments, maybe sending them a tie break and getting them to write down like a little story. These are some of the things I've been playing with. Just get them to fall in love with the game, get them to have a favorite player, get them to watch Grand Slams, get them to watch just little snippets. It's difficult to get a kid to watch a 5-set match or a 3-set match, but get them to watch a tiebreak, get them to watch 3 games, get them to watch a short set. That's how we should be using the pros. Number 4 is peer pressure. Really, really tough one. And I've had lots of conversations over the last 12, 18 months since the LTA have changed the way the coach qualifications are done. Because it is a lot tougher now. It's a lot tougher to pass your level 1, level 2, even level 3. You've got to know your stuff, and you've got to be able to coach in a much more game-based style, more tactical based. And a lot of coaches are struggling out there because their coaches don't coach that way. Their coaches have no idea what these new qualifications are like. And okay, you may throw some shade at the LTA. Maybe they haven't communicated it out there, but surely if I have a young 17, 18-year-old go onto a course and I'm their mentor, I should really be there to help them. Okay, show me the criteria, show me what you're going to be assessed on, show me what tasks or sort of challenges you need to do, and I'll help you. And a big issue is a lot of these kids are going out and their mentors are going back to number 2, tradition coaches, and they haven't kept up with the game and the way coaches changed, or coaching's changed, or coach education's changed. And that puts a lot of pressure on these kids as well. And it's interesting because I visited a club a few weeks back, and one of the coaches on court did a course with me 2 years ago. And really, really good coach, really, really bought into game-based coaching and tactical before technical, and teach the game, don't just teach random shots. And I was watching him coach and I was so disappointed because he was just coaching technique and he was just playing silly games, just silly, fun games, which I get. Kids want to have fun. And then I went back a few weeks later and he did the same session. And I spoke to him afterwards and said, "Oh, what's happened? Like, I really used to love the way you used to coach. You really embraced the game-based style." And He said to me, it's my head coach. My head coach wants me to coach this way because that's what the way my head coach wants me to coach, and I'm doing it because I want to keep my job. I'm like, that's so sad because you had this really good young coach who's picked up some really good knowledge, and going back to what I said before, he's almost ahead of the curve. He's coaching the game how it's going to be coached in 5-10 years, fresh out of his qualifications, and he's gone back to his club, and his traditional coach has absolutely killed him. And again, I get it. The traditional coach, and we'll talk through a couple of them in a minute. Outcome pressure. They want to make sure that the kids are having fun, and it's silly, and it's bells and whistles, and it's jail or cross the river or rats and rabbits, these silly games which do have a place within tennis. I'm not saying that they don't have a place, but yeah, it really hurt me. And I thought, that's so true. And I did another course a few months back, and it was it was basically on LTA youth over here, which is very much a constraint-based approach to coaching under 10s. And I did a workshop on under 9s and under 10s, and I'm quite passionate about constraint-based coaching. So I showed the coaches, and this coach said to me, listen, I really love it. I love the idea. The theory is correct. The implicit learning and the external focus and the decision making, it's amazing. Like I think that's how we should be teaching the game, because I think that will make us better players. But I feel a pressure from the parents. I would feel pressure from the parents because they will question why the players are serving down the line, why the players are not serving cross court, why the players taking 2 touches, why the players not being told how to hit the ball. And I don't want that pressure from the parents because I need to keep my job. And it's true. And I've had it as well, where I took over the player, and well, it's happened to me quite a few times, to be honest. My style of coaching is so constraint based, it's so game based. I will teach the game but hide the technique. And I'm not against technique. We need technique in the game because we have to hit the ball at the end of the day, and we have to manipulate the ball and get different heights and different spins, and that requires technique. And technique is a movement. It's a movement to perform a task. So I'm not against technique, but I hide all my technical coaching. The players don't even know they're working on technique. So this week I did a game, 2-touch tennis. The player, first touch pushes the ball above their head, and then a hip smash. Okay, so it looks a really silly game. Player loves it, absolutely loves. This is a 6-year-old sponge ball, by the way. Absolutely loves it, having the time of his life, loving the game. And you can look at that game and go like, oh, where's the technical coaching? The coach isn't saying anything. Steve's not telling the kid how to hit. Like, when would that ever happen in the game? If you unpack that though, what did I show that player? 1, take the ball early. Take the ball in front of your shoes. That first touch is key. If that first touch is late, the ball shoots over your head, you're not going to hit the smash. So I'm teaching the player how to take the ball early. Contact point. Very technical. I'm also teaching them how to open the racket face up to get the ball to go high. Okay, not quite sending it over the net, but open the racket face up. I'm teaching them how to lift the ball up for the lob. I'm then teaching them how to smash. And I'm teaching them how to smash in a way where they're going to have to adapt their body quite quickly, because depending on their touch, if they touch the ball and push the ball too far forwards, they're going to have to move their feet and take the ball early. If they push the ball up over their head, they're going to have to move back and then adjust the smash. So technical. So technical. But I didn't utter one word of technique. I let the player work out themselves. So it's not that I'm against technical coaching. I just believe there's a better way of packaging it up. And I think a big part of this is we need to educate coaches, going back to tradition, the game's changing, and how players learn is sort of changing as well. But we really have to educate the parents. Like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because the player's learning all these skills, and 1, he's having fun, so he's developing a love for the game. And 2, he's learning loads of techniques. He's learning how to control the ball out in front, possibly return the serve. He's learning how to lob. He's learning how to smash, all in one movement. All in one movement. I'm teaching 3 things at once. So why would I stand him there and just gently throw a ball up to him so he can perfectly hit a smash? Because when you play a match, that lob is not going to go perfect. That lob's going to be behind you, and you're going to be struggling to get it back, or it's going to be dropping really quick in front of you. I don't understand why we close practice and we give these perfect shots. And I'm going to do a video next week on the volley, and it's like, why would you feed a perfect volley to somebody? Why? It makes absolutely no sense, because if you're at the net, I'm going to try and hit you with the ball, or I'm going to try and get the ball past you. So you're going to have to volley in close. You're going to have to volley at stretch. It just boggles the mind how coaches just close and isolate the game and think that's a good way of coaching. Repetition, repetition. You're never going to hit the same ball twice in tennis in a row, ever. So what? So why are we having this repetition, and we have this? So it doesn't break down. It doesn't break down under pressure. It's gonna break down under pressure. Technique breaks down when you can't adapt. It's not about repetition. It's about adaptation. And I say this all the time to my players who perform in sort of tournaments. And I said it recently at County Cup. The player who wins the match is the player who adapts to what happens. Bad line call, bad bounce, gets caught too tight, gets caught too wide. Can they adapt when things are maybe going a little bit against them, when it's a little bit uncomfortable? And I think peer pressure is huge. But again, that's education. It's education, coach education with coaches, and parent education. I think the LCA doing a lot of really good stuff at the moment with parents and sort of competition and stuff. But I think as coaches, and maybe as a governing body, we need to educate the parents of, okay, this is the reason why. Pardon me. Terrible life. This the reason why I'm playing this silly game. Playing this silly game because this is what I'm getting out of it. This is what I'm teaching them. I'm teaching them all these things. Or I could just go very traditional and just throw a ball to them so they can perfectly hit the shot. Time is a big challenge because we only have these players for 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Okay, so let's say it's 60 minutes. They come in, they warm up. Most coaches do a shocking warm up. So that's a wasted 15 minutes. Just really boring. Couple of laps around the court. Worst warm up ever. Not going to engage the brain, not going to warm anything up, really. Not really going to get them ready to perform. Okay, so after you've done a couple of laps, hit a few balls in the boxes, really loose, have a little chat, then go back to the baseline, hit from the baseline, and then probably go straight into it. A half decent coach might do some cross court, some volleys, some serves, some returns. So you've wasted maybe 20 odd minutes, and because your warm up is so disengaging, you then start teaching, but the player's not engaged, so they're not really listening. So what coaches tend to do then is oh, you know what, I'm just going to tell you, I've got half an hour to teach you how to hit a serve, rather than you work it out yourself, rather than you learn how to feel and get to understand the serve and what to sort of do with the serve and why we have to do certain things with the serve. I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to tell you because it's easier for me. It's easier for me. And I'm also going back to number 4. If I just tell you I'm the coach, you're the player, it's my job, right? Then I justify your mum and dad pay me money. That's all it is. And you only have to look at the science and the research. Most players are not auditory learners. Yeah, they don't learn by listening. And the coach will tell them and tell them and tell them. Most kids or players are kinesthetic learners, learn by feel, learn by doing. Goes back into that constraint-based coaching we talked about before. A lot of visual learners as well. So they're going to learn by watching you. So if you're basket feeding, they're not learning nothing. If you're hitting and you're playing the same game they're doing and you're performing the same action they're doing, okay, now they're learning. But again, coaches just see it as sort of as time pressure. And I know what, I'll just tell you what to do. I'll just tell you where to go. And the big issue with that from a performance side is when they play a match, they don't have you on the court. So they have to make their own decisions. They don't have you to solve the problems for them. And that's huge. And you wonder why players struggle at competition, especially when they start playing tournaments, because they get there and they've got no safety net. They don't have a coach telling them how to play the game. They're on the court. They look around and there's no one. There's just someone on the other side of the net, maybe an umpire at the side if they're playing red or under 8s. They've got no support, and that's why they stress out, because they don't know what to do. They're so freaked out. They don't know what to do. And it's because of the coach. The coach is told and told and told, but then they're not there. So if you are going to be that tell-all coach, you best go to those tournaments. You best go to those tournaments and help those players. Or you can help the players make their own decisions and work stuff out themselves in your lesson. That's more valuable than just teaching them. If you teach them to be more independent and solve problems and give them skills that they can perform under pressure, then you don't need to go to tournament, because the kid will be ready and equipped. But we're sending these kids to events where they're not ready. They're not ready because you have not done the job properly. Hold my hand up. I've done that. I've done that. I've been really technical and told them how to play. And okay, I believe this is right for you. I think you should go here on this situation. I think you should do that in this situation. Oh, go cross on this ball, go line on that ball. And the game's not like that. The game is there's no guarantees in tennis. That's my new phrase I've been using a lot recently. There's no guarantees. So we need to teach players how to problem solve. But I get it. I get it, because we've got an hour, sometimes half an hour. Again, I had a player, we did the two-touch drill, 30 minutes this week. What can I teach him in 30 minutes? Not a lot. So can I give him a set of skills in 30 minutes? Can I teach him the most I can in 30 minutes? Yeah. What did we do? We did attack, rally, defense. We did lobs, forehands, backhands. We did controlling time, controlling space. We did all that in 30 minutes, and we did it all in games. Didn't teach him anything in terms of verbal teaching, but I taught him a lot tactically and skill wise in 30 minutes. So I maximize my time with that player, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to stop using time, and on time as well. I think the other thing for me is, yeah, the player can practice outside the tennis. I'm a huge fan of unstructured tennis. Huge. I don't believe players need more lessons. I think they need less. I think we overcoach players. I'm not a huge fan of this new tradition of individuals over groups, because it's the most fake environment that you'll ever find yourself in, because it's one-on-one with a coach who's going to hit the ball nicely to you and make things nice and pretty and make you feel good. In a match, your opponent's going to hit the ball away from you and make you feel bad. Okay, if you play in a group, it's going to be more varied. It's going to be random. You're going to have a player against you who's going to make you feel awkward and bad. So I'm a big believer that more groups over individuals. But I do believe individuals do play a role. But like I say to my players, like, have one lesson with me. Just go and play with your mates 2-3 hours a week. Like, you don't need 4 hours with me. If you can get on court and hit some balls with mum or dad or your mates, that's more valuable than hitting balls with me. Obviously, it's tough if mum or dad always ends up in arguments, but if you can just find a friend and just go and play tennis, because that's how most top players learn. They just play the game. But coaching has become such a business now, where coaches make you believe that you need more. You need more lessons. You need 8 groups a week. You need 8 individuals. You've got to be full time when you're like 10. You don't. You need maybe 1 lesson a week, a group, and then lots of just play. Just go and play the game. So I don't time. I see it from a coach's point of view. You might have this player once a week for an hour, and we just got to hit them as much information as possible. But I just think there's lots of ways around that. Maximize the time you have with a player by teaching them as much as possible in terms of skill, and then just let the player go out and play. And last but not least, too technical. Again, I'm not against technique. Technique, we need technique, as a definition, is a movement to complete a task. But it's not the be all end all of the game. And over the past sort of 18 months, I've been doing a lot of performance workshops and sort of looking at the Simon Wheatley stuff and working with the LTA performance team. And one thing that's really stood out for me is technique is the last thing these coaches are looking at. It really is. And you could say, okay, but when they're at a performance level, they've already got the technique. They've got skill. They've got really, really good skill. They're good problem solvers. They're really strong mentally. They're really good physically. They've got really good brains and tactics. And the technique is just a combination of all those things. It's just skill. They've learned how to adapt that forehand to go cross or go line at certain points. And I think sometimes we just stand our players down. We just shout and bark instructions technically, low to high, rotate your hips, high elbow finish. There's a great clip on my Instagram with Djokovic months ago, maybe last year, where he hits, I think, 6, 7 forehands in a row. Every forehand looks different. Every forehand looks completely different. He's got a high finish, low finish. He's got an open racket face, closed racket face. He's got a big swing, small swing. Like, you don't have one forehand. You've got multiple forehands, multiple backhands. You're going to have to serve in lots of different ways, and you're going to have to adapt your body for the sun, for the wind, for the conditions, for a shoulder injury, for nerves, for confidence. You're going to serve technically different all the time. And again, I think a big part of this goes to number 4. I think it's peer pressure, and then number 2, it's tradition, because it's always been the way. And tennis, again, when I started coaching, was very technical and very traditional. And us Brits used to have a very good reputation for very technical, great players, really good technical, great players. But when it came to sort of the big Grand Slams and stuff before, obviously Andy Murray and so this current crop, they never made it. They never made it because, again, they couldn't play the game. They were technically very gifted because they were overcoached. And it was interesting because I was listening to a presentation on, it was rugby this week, and what they were saying about the English, because obviously I'm from England, is the English, it's all authority. The coach will set up the drill, the coach will set up the play, and it's the coach will dictate how to hit the ball. Whereas in other countries, it's all about sort of New Zealand and Australia, they just set up games. They just set up games, and then the players will just adapt, and it's much more unstructured. And it's much more, they'll set up scenarios, and then the players are going to work it out themselves. And players find a way of doing things under pressure. And you know what? I was like, you know what? It's so true. Like in our country, like our schooling, we get told what to do from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We get told what to do, when to do it. We get told on the sort of, I was going to say the chalkboard, to show my age, on the whiteboard or the TV screen. Okay, these are our bullet points. We're going to work through this way. And it's such a crazy way of thinking because you don't have any independence. You don't find a way of doing things yourself. And like from speaking to a couple of Spanish coaches, like they say, well, they have some coaching. They may do some basket drills, technical coaching, I guess. But then they just play. They just go and play. They just let them play the game, and the coaches take a back seat. And it's I do think it is too technical. Again, I'm not against technique at all. I don't want to come across like I'm against technique, but at the cost of skill and decision making, is it really worth it? When we look at our game in a cold lighted day, it's an open environment. The ball can go high, low, fast, slow, topspin, slice. Like it's so open, but yet we teach it in such a technical, almost like there's a great quote that I read the other day. Like some tennis coaches almost teach it like the golf driving range. You put the ball down, and then it's all technical how to drive through the ball. But even that's a fake environment because apart from the drive itself, if you play golf, you're going to play on a slope, you're going to play in rough grass, you're going to play in short grass, you're going to play out the sand and stuff like that. So it's just a fake environment, which I think benefits the coach more than does the player. And I think one big thing of mine over maybe the last 3 or 4 years is I'm much more player focused these days. It's less about me. Like if I can do a session where I hardly talk and I hardly have an input, then I come away quite happy because my job is just to guide the player. It's to guide them on their journey. It's to help them along. My job is not to go in there and teach. And I say to my players all the time, like, they are my boss. They're my boss. they should have a huge input into the session, because at the end of the day, when they step on that court, it's their tennis, it's not mine. And things like, should I teach my player single or double-handed backhand? It's up to the player. Player can pick. Should the player go down the line or cross court on a short ball? Up to the player. Obviously, there's tactical advantages by going down the line. Okay, let the player find out. Should they play a drop shot? Should they play slice? There was an interesting conversation last week about at the under-10 performance workshop, and one of the coaches said that previously one of their coaches where they worked banned players from slicing the ball because slice was lazy. You can't slice. It's like, wow, like you're going to need to be able to slice. Like you got to slice not only to defend, but it could be very aggressive as well. And it just shows you how number two, tradition, comes in. Like we're not developing robots. Like I have maybe 10 players, 15 players I work with. Each player is different. I'm not teaching them the same. I might have the same theme in terms of, okay, they need to be able to serve, return, and sort of play some shots, but I'll play differently. And so I did a session last night with six teenagers, and we did serve, ball three, looked at ball three, get a neutral ball on ball three. I said to them, do what you want. You can either attack from that neutral ball. You can go neutral. You could defend if you wanted to defend. But really try and find out what you want to do with that ball. And it was interesting because there was no technical input whatsoever. And when I set up the drill was, okay, serve, feed in a neutral ball, roughly around the mini orange baseline, and then play the point out. And the first drill, everyone just rallied. No one attacked. Everyone just neutral to neutral. And I got them in and I said, okay, well, what do you think the top players are doing? What do you think like the Alcarazes are doing in the world? Are they going neutral, or are they trying to take the edge? Are they trying to take a little bit of a foothold in the rally? And they also, well, yeah, the top players maybe look to be a bit more aggressive. You're right, they are. Like they're trying to win the point. They're not just trying to get the ball back and out rally their opponents, which is just a crazy method. And it was interesting because then on the second drill, they all went out much more aggressive and they won more points. They won more points as a server, either on ball three or ball four. Again, I didn't really give them too much information technically. I was like, well, like tactically, what are you going to do with it? You're going to go back neutral. You're going to try and take the ball a bit earlier, and they start taking the ball earlier. They start to change the path of the racket, went a little bit flatter through the ball. Some of them use sort of drop shots, and sort of some of them use really heavy topspin to push their opponent back on ball three, so they come in and finish on ball five. And they started to find different ways of winning, and they started to change and adapt their technique. And I didn't do anything. I just gave them the reasoning. Okay, this is what the top players are doing. Do you want to be a top player, or do you want to be an average player? The top players are doing this. Should we follow them a little bit? Mimic the pros. But I didn't mimic the pros in terms of technique. It was, okay, this is what the top players are doing. The top players in your age group are taking advantage here. Should you take advantage tactically? Okay, go out there and work it out technically. And listen, these are all challenges, and I'm always conscious that I don't want to come across as preaching like this is the best way to coach, because I think ultimately we all have our ways. And I think if we all get the players to stay in the game and we all get the players to reach their goals, then we all do our job. The reason why I put out this content really is just to maybe help. Just to help. This is what works for me. It might not work for you. It might not be your way. You may think that I'm talking absolute rubbish, which is fine. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. And I'm always open to listen and talk and sort of be challenged on things. And I don't have an ego, but I do put a lot of time into research. So I read stuff, I listen to stuff, I watch presentations, I pick the brains of some really top coaches who I'm lucky to sort of call friends. And yeah, I just put this information out to try and help. It's not me preaching. Take little bits from it. And that's the way I've made my whole career. I've looked at stuff and thought, you know what, really like that. I'm going to bring that into my coaching. Really like that. Bring that into my coaching. Not too sure on that. I'll leave that alone. And I think that's the reason why I'm a coach educator is for that reason, is to get out there and just share knowledge and share experience and try and help. So please don't feel like I'm coming across as preaching. It's the best way to coach. Absolutely not. It's just what works for me. It's what I believe in. It's my passion. And if you take maybe one out of these six and change, then I'm happy. If you listen to all six and think, you know what, no, I don't agree with that, I'm happy with mine, then I'm happy with that as well, because it shows you're passionate and you believe in your way of coaching. I think that's half the battle. I think if you believe in it, the players will believe in it, and then you'll just sell it in a slightly different way. But listen, a bit of a ramble, a little bit different for this week. I will try and mix these up every Friday. Maybe some presentation video based stuff, some stuff like today when just talking about topics. I might do some Q&As. If there's any coaches on here who are listening who would like to maybe do a roundtable on a topic, just give me a shout, drop me a DM. Do check out mytenniscoaching.com for latest blogs and some sort of ways to work with me. Obviously, please follow at My Tennis Coaching on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. If you're not already part of our My Tennis Coaching group on Facebook, head over there, join it. We've got just under 3,000 coaches, lots of good content, some really top coaches in there as well. And until next Friday, have a great week, and I'll see you on court soon. As I try and work out how to close off. Okay, now I'll see you again soon.